What is up, Hyperfit family? Wanted to have a shorter video on tracking macros, weighing food, all these kind of things. Also, I'm dadding really hard right now. My son is sick during the time I had scheduled to record when my wife takes the other two to a workout class with her. So if you hear VeggieTales in the background, it's because VeggieTales is playing right there. But anyway, so obviously with the tracking your macros, there's really two methods that you can use. One a little bit more accurate, the other one less so but more convenient. The less so but more convenient one is the hand portion measurements. And so the way I kind of will say this is that one palm of your hand is one portion of protein. It's typically about 20-25 grams of protein depending on the protein source, obviously. To do carbs, you would do one cup, like one cupped hand is one portion of carb. 1 gram, one serving of fat, like olive oil, cooking oil, would be about the size of your thumb on the cooking pan, right? So obviously the nice thing about this is if you're at a restaurant, if you're at somebody's house, you're not preparing the food, you can kind of say, okay, this is about what I use, right? So typically for protein, you know this already, but we want to be protein forward. And so we want to have like 1 to 2 palms of protein on our plate. And then have a nice good serving of fruits or veggies on there, taking up like a third of the plate, and then like one portion of carbs is good if you're in a weight loss phase. So now obviously if you want to track a little bit more accurately, that's when this food scale would come in, and a lot of people don't know how to do this. So I wanted to kind of show you guys just how I do it and talk a little bit more about tracking and macros in general. So pretty straightforward, there's 2 ways to do it. So before you track this way, you would want to either look at the nutrition label in the back of the food, or if it doesn't have one because it's like meats or something like that, then you would just, you could Google or look in our app what a portion of it is or how many grams. I typically like to track by grams. It's just easier because also on most food labels like this one, it says serving size is half a cup or 114 grams. And so if you're gonna go through the work of weighing food, I like using grams. It's a little bit more accurate. So how you would do this, there's 2 ways, is start with the bowl or whatever on top, because when you turn on the food scale, it's gonna automatically zero out for you, which is nice. So I'm gonna turn it on. And so this, a serving size of cottage cheese, is 114 grams. So big scoop. Oh, I forgot to change the units. There we go, we're at grams. So that's 52. That's 92. And that's 124. So I went over a little bit. So you scoop some back. 117, 115, and a little bit, just 1 gram. Cool, we're at 114. So that'd be the one way to do it. That's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, is to have the bowl or the measuring cup or whatever on here already, turn it on, set it to grams, and then you'd scoop out until this number hit 114, or whatever the serving size grams it would be. So the other way to do this would be, put this back in because I'm not actually eating this, would be to let's zero this out. So you'd hold this down, zero it out. And so you would take the actual thing you are measuring. Oh, gotta open this thing. Clearly didn't set this up in advance. So you would take the whole thing you're measuring, right? So you'd look at the serving size. Serving size, this is 46 grams. So this is the other way you could do with liquids. So this whole thing weighs 489 grams. And so you would then continue to pour things out until you hit, 489 minus 46 in math and stuff. Now it says 490 because it's angled a little bit differently. So what would that be? That'd be 44 grams or something like that. So minus, so 444. So I'd pour a little bit out, weigh it again, not there. Pour a little bit out, weigh it again. Cool, I'm there now. That's the other way to do it for liquids. My brain doesn't like that way. I would much rather do it the first way, but my wife really likes doing it that way, for liquids especially. The only exception to this rule with tracking would be when you're using your cooking oils. You could do the same thing with cooking oils, obviously, but it's a little bit more convenient. So for cooking oils, I still will use like a measuring spoon, and it works out pretty well. The biggest thing with tracking your macros, we're tracking everything. One, use it as a diagnostic tool, not as something you have to do for like the rest of your life, just because that's obnoxious. But I like tracking macros, especially early on, if I'm going into a cut or a bulk, or in this, the fat loss program, then you would want to do it early on, just as a diagnostic tool. Like, what am I currently doing, right? Maybe you've set them already, you set your macros, great. But tracking rigorously for a week, it's just going to give you a really good sense of what you actually need to be at or what you're actually doing if you're over. So you're tracking your fats, you're tracking your carbs, you're tracking your proteins, you're tracking your veggies, you're tracking everything you eat and drink with calories in it. And then from there, you can make those adjustments over time. So now another thing with doing the macros approach is if you set your macros, you're hitting them, and you see a lot of progress, remember that our bodies are adaptive. And so you might be crushing it for like 12, 16 weeks, something like that, but then all of a sudden you plateau at your same macro count and you're hitting it. And a couple of things. One, you're a smaller person, so you need to adjust your macros accordingly and bring them down a little bit. But also, another thing you can do, is other videos on this too, is instead of tracking your macros down again and having even less food, that might be a good opportunity to bump up your cardio. So that way your food can stay the same, but your caloric expenditure goes up and we can get back into that deficit that you need. With all of this, with tracking, the most important thing is your consistency and adherence. So yes, food scales are awesome, but even if you don't have a food scale, if you're out and about somebody's house doing the hand portion side, best judgment, it just looks like one serving, right? One palm or one cupped handful or whatever. Tracking is just doing it, right? Because even if it's not exact, even if it's not perfect, the fact that you're doing it and being cognizant of your food, that's awesome. If you are eating at somebody's house, if you're eating at a restaurant in particular, which we typically don't recommend on a cut, but you have to assume there's at least one serving of fat in whatever you're eating. So don't forget to track fats. A lot of people forget to track cooking oils and fats, and that can be that's lots of calories, potentially hundreds of calories throughout the week that you're not tracking, or throughout the day that you're not tracking. So you'll find though that when you are cooking, especially just for yourself or with families, you might only use like one serving of olive oil or avocado oil or something like that, but you're cooking a serving size of for 4 people or 8 people. Well, cool. Then you just say, okay, there's 4 portions here. I use one serving size of oil. So you'd say, when you track, you say, okay, I have to assume there's at least a quarter of a serving size of this oil in my food. Is that exact? Do you know? No, but you have to assume, right? When you're eating out and you're tracking, you have to assume there's at least 1 to 2 servings of cooking oil in your food, potentially more. Now, obviously, there's some restaurants you'll find they have their macros there. Great, put them in there. But if it's a mom and pop shop, or if you can't find it, whatever, you have to assume 1 or 2 servings of cooking oil. The reason that grilled chicken tastes so much better at a restaurant than when you make it at home is butter. The answer is butter. There's a lot of butter in restaurant foods. And so I think with all of this might seem overwhelming. This might seem like a lot. That's why I say do it for a week. Don't think you need to do this forever. You might find after a week you really hate doing it this way. You hate tracking macros, and that's fine. You might find that you really like it. But I think using it as a diagnostic tool to say, okay, this is what I'm actually eating. I thought I was at 2,000. No, I really am at 3,000 calories a day. But using it as a diagnostic tool, using it as a way to gauge where you're at. And then if you really hate doing it, right, what you can do is, if you're hitting your macro numbers throughout that week, you notice you lose a pound or 2. Okay, I hate doing it this way, but I know the meals that led me to lose the 1 or 2 pounds or whatever the case may be. So then it's just copy and pasting, right? Okay, let's just stick with these meals, stick with these types of foods as long as I can, as long as I see results, and as long as I don't go crazy. Because either way, whether you're doing kind of macro tracking, being really rigorous, or more of intuitive eating, once again, your consistency and adherence is the most important thing. You have to just keep doing it. And that's the hard part, is every week doing the same thing week after week. The benefit of tracking macros is you can kind of eat whatever you want to a certain extent. We obviously want to stick with good food. But as long as it fits your macros, you're good, right? And so, if you have 300 calories left at the end of the day and you've hit your protein goals, and you have some extra carbs and fats left over, whatever, you can have like a little snack or something like that because you have 300 calories left. You're good to go. If you're not tracking macros, you have to assume you're good, right? And so that's the hard part of intuitive eating. It's a bit more restrictive so far as you're cutting out certain foods completely. So anyway, I hope this helps. I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions about tracking or anything like that, as always, don't hesitate to reach out.